Jason jumps on, we'll kind of get after it here as we go a little bit here. So excited to do these things. And just as folks are kind of trickling on here, again, we'll try to base these sorts of conversations around hearing more about Jason. He's an amazing story, I think, to sort of lead into this one that I think you'll all find fascinating. So when he jumps on, we'll sort of dive into it, and I'll try to weave into some of the great questions that you guys have already offered. If you have more, definitely feel free to add them in. And I will share the video of this one for the folks that couldn't make it live. You'll be able to watch the video recording of this conversation. And at the end, we will do kind of a fun little like group photo exercise. So you can take a photo with Jason and here kind of get yourself out there, and definitely feel free to share, share with your network about the people you're meeting here, the stories you love. And again, I think that's a neat part of it here is to, definitely share these stories that you're finding interesting here. Many people will use these stories in their own books. So any of the conversation you have here, you can certainly use in your book. And yeah, it should be a fun conversation, a chance to meet someone awesome, learn from them. And we do something cool as well here, so that at the end of this process here, if you do want to send a signed copy of your book to any of these amazing speakers that we have, I'll let you know how to do that one. And that way you can send them a copy and get them to sort of see some of your work here as a cool little way to plug into new people. For those of you who are on the Monday session, I'm guessing this will not be quite as crazy as our first one with Tiffany, but we'll see. You never know how these things kind of go and play. So it should be a fun conversation at the least.
How was your wife's birthday, Eric?
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was not quite as crazy as I thought it was sort of teed up to be. So we were good on that front. It was not quite that crazy. So
excellent. Was so happy. It was a lot of fun. You played the game. You were great.
I have to.
She was really pushing you.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So
and to Melissa's question here, the Tiffany interview is not recorded here. We'll have some notes on what the show was here, but the other conversation with Jim was recorded. We'll be posting it shortly here. So there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you, my man? Great to see you. I think you're on mute here. Let's unmute you here, I guess. Let me see if we can get you unmuted. There we go.
There we go.
How are you?
Oh, I am well, man. I woke up this morning, so I feel very tremendously blessed to be here. How you guys doing?
It's good. It's good. We were just chatting in advance here. Everyone's like getting out their sneakers here for this conversation. So everyone's, so I was going to ask a funny question here. So like, you're like the sneaker guru now, right? Like, so like, do people come up to you and be like, sign these shoes, or like, what is it? What's like the weird stuff that people do now with like shoes and you, when you meet them in real life?
Oh man, it's insanely awkward. It's everything, sign shoes to, can I sketch a shoe on somebody's arm, to, people telling me stories of how they slept outside for products I've worked on. And I listen to every single person. What's even funnier, I think what's more awkward is me, when I see people wearing my product, I thank them, and they're like, who is this random black dude thanking me for something? I'm just like, look, all the shoes and all the products you chose to wear mine, so no, it's still every day I feel like the same kid, man, in Chicago that's just dreaming of doing what I do for a living. So I never get tired of it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, we're going to dive in more on this thing here a little bit, but I guess I gotta, for your story of this whole like thing is kind of like this, this crazy journey here that you get to become the guy doing your dream life. So I'm just going to let you tell it, because like here you are, this kid in Chicago, not sort of set up in this world where people thought you could ever do this thing. Just take us through the journey here of how you went from this kid who was dreaming of sneakers, like hunting around Foot Lockers to sketch stuff, to being able to be inside the Nike headquarters designing these crazy sneakers.
Yeah. Before I start, I want to at least acknowledge that I appreciate each and every one of you showing up. I appreciate the time and the space that you made for me. I don't take people's time for granted. It's the one resource we wish we had more of, but we can't get. So I really appreciate each of you, and I'm encouraged by the work that you're all doing to tell narratives that are diverse and inclusive because it's important.
Yep.
So just to kind of set the context, I was born in a neighborhood in Chicago called Roseland. It was in the Pullman district, which was an industrial area, so close to a lot of the train yards and factories. So I come from a traditional blue collar family like most people in the Midwest. But what's quite different about my family is that they not only were people who were entrepreneurs, they were insurance salesmen, they were activists, they were church builders, they were community builders, they were math teachers, military people, street hustlers. So I had the perfect mixture of intentionality and purpose, but more importantly, knowledge of self.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't raised to be intellectually shackled. I was raised to be a free thinker, to be curious. And so at the age of 7, I was put in a position where I also had to understand the temporal nature of life and my own mortality. I was diagnosed with something called septicemia, which is a severe blood infection. Mm-hmm. And my parents caught it at the 25th hour, late 80s. My parents they've been together since they were 14 and 15.
Really?
Excuse me, 13 and 14. So
cool.
Yeah, my dad used to bother my mom in middle school, and she was like, I don't like all these 40 something years later, they're still married, man. He's still bothering her. But but what was interesting is the medical system at that time, they were doing blood transfusions without screening for HIV. And so my parents, who, my dad was an ex-military Army Ranger, my uncle's special forces, so they're very critical thinkers. And they were like, wait, we're not going to give our son blood transfusions because we know they're not being screened in the inner city. So they went from doctor to doctor to doctor, trying to figure out what was wrong. I ended up in the hospital on my deathbed. And during that time period, I remember, kind of oscillating between consciousness and unconsciousness. And when I would wake up, I would hear people talk about my mortality, like if he's okay, if he'll make it, if he'll be, the same type of kid. And during that time period, all I could do was ask the nurse for Pepsi free, and then read Batman comic books and watch Adam West Batman because I couldn't really move. And comic books were a form of escapism. Mm-hmm. And so, I learned about this gentleman named Dr. Lucius Fox. He was a Black guy who ran Wayne Enterprises. He created gadgets for Batman, and his story was a lot like mine. He was a blurred, which is a Black nerd. He was autodidactic, a polymath. He did things because he wanted to learn them, not because he was told to learn them. Mm-hmm. And I decided to pursue a life that would be, a mirror of his. So in that moment, my Batman was Michael Jordan. He had just came to Chicago. Michael was a person who, for all intents and purposes, people don't talk about what he did in the city for children. He would stop on the west side of Chicago and give out free tickets. He would go to the beach on 26 in California and play pickup basketball. He would go to Chicago State on the weekends when he was in town in the off season and play against local people in the neighborhood. My dad was a street baller, so my dad would play basketball for money.
Really?
While he was finishing his undergrad degree. Yeah.
Super cool.
My dad came out of the military and they called him money because he would, at the end of the game, he would always bet people that he can't hit a full court shot. And he would hit it and walk away and just look at me. I'm in the car. And I'm like, my dad is like, special forces, so nobody was going to stop him from walking off this court. And so everybody knew what it was. And so my dad, we lived up and kind of grew up in kind of the basketball culture. But realistically, what happened for me was I fell in love with the act of invention and creativity, as I tell a lot of people, became my jump shot. So I used intelligence, I used curiosity to kind of navigate a very complex web of traps, quite honestly. In the 80s, it was when they sped up the labeling of children of color in the inner city by saying we have ADHD or ADD or some form of behavior dysfunction, so they can prescribe us with medication because they got tax dollars. My parents knew this. They didn't allow that to happen to me, gave me a supplemental education, and I ended up, advancing in school at such a rapid rate that they thought something was wrong.
Really?
And what was wrong was the system. The system wasn't built for me. It was built for rote memorization. It wasn't built for discovery. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I would discover things by getting up in class and bothering people. I called it networking. They called it distraction. So I was trying to network with my classmates. I figured, your net worth is your network, so I might as well start meeting people. And along the way, I started to want to know, how can I get to Nike? So I wrote letters. I called 1-800 numbers. I talked to customer service, and I finally heard the word internship. And from there, I locked in on that. So playing sports and doing what I was doing academically, it led me towards the path of understanding that designing for athletes was a combination of science, biomechanics, technology, investigation, through true psychological understanding. So psychology in terms of cognitive functioning and cognitive therapy, because a lot of guys, they when you think about modeling performance, they talk out loud to themselves. So it's talk therapy in sense, and introspection. So it's headed down the path of becoming a mechanical and electrical engineer and going to Georgia Tech to potentially walk on and play football. I was super young. So, I'm 16 years old, getting ready to graduate, trying to go D1 with football. And these are grown men playing the 18.
Yeah.
I was big and I was fast, but, I'm still a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So, actually, what happened there is transferred high school my senior year, was in a car accident. I was hit by a drunk driver. We were going to the north side of Chicago for elements competition. Elements mean the 5 elements of hip hop. My friends were B-boys and B-girls, and we were all like at that time running track. And I was a graffiti artist and an MC because that was the only time I spoke was when I rapped, because I was the extreme introvert until my brother forced me not to be. And yeah, the drunk driver hit me and took away my chances of playing football because my shoulder got messed up. But my track and field coach, they knew that I loved art and pushed me to go to art school and use art as a sport. So got there to CCS, drove up there with my parents, negotiated my way into art school. My portfolio was trash. It was like, girls' names in bubble letters and a couple sketches of cars and sneakers. It wasn't a story. It didn't really show my skill set, but they saw my work ethic. And what I told them in my negotiation, because they first rejected me, and I said, no, I drove too far. You're not going to say no to me. And end of the day, I'll compete against anybody. And they're like, well, how old are you? I'm like, 16. They're like, where's your parents? They're outside, but this is between us. We're talking. I want to go to this school. Because my dad and my mom told me, look, if you want to go, you have to speak for yourself. So I had to come out of my shell, and I pretended to be my older brother. Now, to give you context, my older brother looked like a 90s R&B star. I was the nerdy little brother, and he was like the dude from H-Town, like Drew Hill. He was like,
Jodeci here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, who is this? I was little AC until he graduated. Then people called me by my first name. And so I channeled my older brother and his personality. And, I got into CCS on probation, from an artistic perspective. Academically, I was prolific. I was okay. But artistically, I wasn't. So I had to double major. I got into industrial design, which is a highly competitive degree. I minored in graphic design. And eventually, like I said, I turned art into my sport. I sketched 1,000, sketches a day one summer and just upped my craft. I read every single book I can read at the Art Institute of Chicago about art history and movements and craft, and came back from freshman year into sophomore year and ended up, going from the bottom of the class and graduating top of the country in 4 years later. And, being Nike's first design intern, I was Black, which was crazy at the age of 19.
That's crazy.
Yeah, super crazy considering all the athletes were
That's
Black.
what I was gonna say.
Like really creative.
It's such a weird thing I mean, like that would never, like, it's just one of those things here. Like, and again, you have to use context at the time, right? At the time, there was probably like no one even was asking those questions. Today, that like it wouldn't make any sense. But it is crazy to think that like in that particular business, that like you were the first, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like a lot of the older gentlemen who joined Nike came from different industries. So for me to go through the traditional art school system, compete, apply, get the job, it was unheard of. Because I don't have a traditionally what they would assume a stereotypical Black name. Right. So I put my Black face on my portfolio, and I told them, "You're gonna have to say no to my face." So I get this portfolio with this giant smile on the picture, and it happened kind of through divine providence. My portfolio was left in the conference room. It had an aesthetic that rivaled what Apple was doing at the time. They had just recruited a gentleman from Apple. He thought it was Apple collateral. He picks it up, notices it's my portfolio, gives it to the recruiter. She calls me. Her husband was the head of the symphony in Detroit. I was in school in Detroit, and she was like, "You're phenomenal. How did you not? Where are you from?" I tell her the story. I tell her what I was interested in. I wanted to grow up to become Lucius Fox. My portfolio was essentially, I took an accelerometer from an airbag project well, from a car project I was working on at the time. I was doing interiors for BMW. We had to do it in our studio projects.
Mhm.
And I figured, like, wait, if this is tracking velocity and acceleration, why can't I do this for action sports? I was huge into BMX. My roommate was a competitive snowboarder.
Mhm.
So I took an accelerometer, which was massive at the time, and I figured out a way to hack the original Rio MP3 player from Nike, and I created an adaptive playlist. So it matched his accelerations and decelerations, and it would pick a song based on how fast he was going. And he was huge into punk rock, so everything from Jimmy Eat World to a bunch of ska music to, I'll throw in some NWA, and he would just go out and shred.
Huh.
And so I put this in the portfolio. They seen it. I get a job, and I accidentally signed over my intellectual property rights, and it became Nike Plus. It was a signing bonus. At 19, you get a $5,000 check. You like, yo, everybody, we going to eat. I'm putting some money up. I'm buying some sneakers. We're rich. I didn't know any better. But because of that product and that project, Mr. Knight saw that I wasn't the typical creative, so he let me rotate through every function in the company. Eventually, we grew Jordan Brand to go from being a shoe to being what it is today. I left to go to grad school at Stanford. Mr. Knight and Mr. Jordan surprisingly paid for it, just because, out of respect for what I've done for them. Yeah, they sponsored me, gave me a salary, benefits, paid for me to go to school, let me be a full-time student with no hooks, no expectations. I decided to go back to Nike after grad school out of respect for what they did for me.
Mhm.
I was there for 2.5 years. I ran innovation for digital sports, so I finally was able to get into digital at Nike. I had floated around the scenes at Nike, but digital wasn't a thing yet.
Mhm.
We built the fuel van. I did a bunch of robotics research, computer vision, AR stuff, and this was in 2011. So now we see the NBA with augmented reality, and it's normal. We were doing this in 2011, and they were like, Jason, this is some ridiculous Star Wars stuff that never happened. I'm like, no, it's Lucius Fox, and it is going to happen. So then my son coincidentally ended up having health challenges when I got to my dream job, which was running design for Oliver Jordan, and I quit. People were confused. They didn't understand why someone like me would get to this apex position, the most coveted job in all of sneakers, and then walk away from it. And I told them, I said, because it's a job, and the responsibility I have is to be a father and a husband. The job I have is to be a designer. Jobs change, but my responsibilities won't. And I'll never put a job in front of my family. I'll never put, a popularity in front of purpose. I said, the popular thing is to stay. The purposeful thing is to lead. I said, I don't answer to anyone but God. I'm doing this for an audience of one. I'm not doing this for y'all. So if you don't agree with my decision, that's your fault, not mine, because I'm doing what I believe my children need me to do, because that is my responsibility. So I got ostracized from the industry. I was accused of potential insider trading and all this other stuff, because they couldn't assume how a young black man would walk away from a very, very, very lucrative job just to be a dad. Yeah. And so I said, because it's what we do. The myth is a myth. Black men and Latino men are highly involved in our families, highly involved in our communities. It's only television that says that we're absent, and we're only absent when we're taken from our home. We don't leave our homes. So what ended up happening with that was my professors at Stanford heard about what I was going through, and they gave me a job on the research team at the D School and the business school. So I joined. I stepped down from the board of the D School, became a research fellow, and then eventually a lecturer and a faculty member. Where I was looking at the cognitive development of our children, specifically children of color. And I wanted to recreate the Boy Scouts for boys in the inner city, to give them survival skills that Boy Scouts don't give them. Like, we all have to have the talk. I'm like, can we have a different relationship with the systemic trauma we face when we have to have the talk? Can we reintroduce this in a way that's not these little micro exposures to malignant normality? Can we do it in a way that gives them confidence instead of, trepidation? Then I realized, like, man, I need to actually tap into the creative arts a little bit more. And I wanted to do something that built stronger children instead of fixing broken adults. So I decided to focus on elementary school kids, the archetype of a superhero, positive psychology, and helping children to bias towards possible selves or outcomes that seem impossible for all, intents and purposes, but are completely accessible when you know how to do it. Built a company called Superheroic. In between that time, I had started companies with athletes, worked in venture capital, drove Uber. I did listen, I'm like the Black Forrest Gump. I've done a lot.
Lucius Fox meets Forrest Gump.
Yeah, man. It's like, when you start with nothing, and that's the thing. I think people often, there's this stigma, right, when you're in corporate America, that as a Black person, you feel I have to be 100% in this company. I got to be 100% loyal. I've always worked 2 or 3 jobs because I'm playing catch up, you
Yeah.
know, and generationally from a wealth creation perspective, there's no way that I can catch up if I'm doing one thing.
Hmm.
And I saw my colleagues around me owning restaurants and investing and doing real estate, but would tell me, hey man, don't be distracted. You know, just keep this job. You should be lucky. And I'm like, why are they telling me to keep one job and you have like 4 or 5 different things going on? Why am I feeling guilty for creating wealth on my own time because I'm not fully giving all of myself to you? I feel guilty, but you're not guilty with talking to me about your rental home in Tahoe
Right.
or your vineyard that you're investing in Miami Valley. But I'm supposed to feel guilty because I'm doing logos for athletes on the side, or I'm helping athletes, you know, with personal design projects for their cars and airplanes. So that's when I realized that the trick in wealth creation, it's people, one, not having an adverse relationship with money and having an adverse relationship with achievement. And so I continued on with multiple career paths, started Super Roy, kept Trilicon Valley, which is my consultancy that I manage everything through for professionals. And you know, we did exceptionally well. COVID hit, and you know, much like every other decision I made in my life, I made the ethical decision. I didn't keep the company going to stroke my own ego because I had employees and people's lives on the line. So I took my own personal wealth and made sure that my employees had, you know, a runway to get what they needed to get done until they found other jobs. It cost me everything financially. No one knew any of this stuff. You know, was living on public assistance for the time being, but I was the most joyful ever because I knew at the end of the day, I did the thing that I wanted to be remembered for, not the thing that I wanted to feel good about, right? Like, because it doesn't feel good seeing your bank account go to zero, but it feels tremendously good knowing that I leave a legacy of servitude. So my employees, you know, all of them are in a better place. I've been very fortunate to have everything I lost replenished, you know, 100x just through, you know, people seeing what I was doing and bringing me in on deals and wanting to do stuff for me. So now I announced this Saturday, my 40th birthday, that I'm joining Logitech as a VP of Elite Performer Offense, which essentially is a new division that I'm building where I get to actually become Lucius Fox in real life. So everything I talk about since I was a kid, I get to finally be a real life version of Lucius, where I work with, you know, the world's greatest heroes, using my gifts and talents to do to do work that matters, you know, not to just do cool stuff, but do real impactful stuff with technology, venture creation, creativity, and more importantly, just honesty and authenticity.
Yeah.
And I still maintain Trilicon Valley while I announce something at the end of the year where I'll be partnering with a large brand to build a new athletic division. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm the only Black person that's sitting at this intersection of culture, creativity, technology, and value creation.
Yep.
And I have a responsibility that I feel now to not only, you know, build sustainable wealth for myself, but for our community, but more importantly, to fight to preserve hope and fight to preserve joy. Because I think once you give up and once you lose hope, you begin to acquiesce to the narrative that they tell us to versus choosing the outcome that you hope and aspire towards. And so I'll tell everyone now, man, and I'll shut up after this, that things aren't falling apart, they're falling into place.
Go.
You know, falling into place. The business model of America is running exceptionally well. Hatred is the most efficient usage of people's time because it costs you nothing, but you get everything. You get frustration, and you can profit from destruction. You can profit from segregation. You can profit from disenfranchisement. There's no P&L for peace, and that's the problem with America. We've only ever made money off of chaos. We speak 2 languages here, commerce and chaos. That's it. We don't speak compassion. We don't speak love. We don't speak community. Those are byproducts of people who care. But if you look at the operating system of this country in terms of what at the source code level is chaos and commerce. The people who founded this country were not noble men. They were not altruistic. They did not come here with intentions of sharing. They came here to steal, kill, and destroy. And so they've done that so well that they've been able to kill our aspirations, steal our true narrative, and destroy our hope. And I just stand in opposition to that. I refuse to be anything other than confident in myself because I'm not here on accident. I'm here for a purpose. And I hope each of you feel like you're here for a purpose. And so with that, you know, I'll shut up.
Dude, just so you know, like, I got chills when you were talking about what the real Lucius Fox here. I have to tell you, like, it is like, here's the thing about it, right? It's like every one of us as a kid believes in superheroes and superpowers and stuff like that, and we give it up. And I give you big props on never losing sight of that thing, that it was real and it can happen and stuff like that. Earlier this week, we had Jim Quick on. If you know Jim, he's like the brain coach to like Elon Musk, stuff like that, right? And he was telling a story about how he got to introduce Stan Lee and Richard Branson together at dinner, right? And I just told him, I was like, and hearing you talk about it, I was like, you should have been at that dinner, I think. like in terms of like, that would have been the perfect intersection point there for sure. But, I do love it. How do you what's so crazy is the story is one of those things of like perseverance, right? Like there's always these times when like, you could have walked away, How do you retain that sense of purpose when like there's a lot of people telling you you're an imposter? There's a lot of like your own internal telling it. How do you fight imposter syndrome, especially when you have such a clear purpose of where you're going?
Oh man, I don't let other people project their insecurities onto me. What's impossible for you is not impossible for me. That's how I look at it. I tell people I beat the odds, man. I'm 15 years past the age of 25. That means that technically I'm a walking anomaly in the eyes of society. So I don't let anyone else tell me what they can do because I didn't live the life. If you believe you can't, that's on you. I believe that you can create miracles when you focus and you lock in. It's just only different versions of difficulty. To believe that things are impossible is to rob yourself of the potential to do something memorable. The moment you anchor on what you can't do, you start to live your fears versus living your dreams. So when people tell me that, I'm like, well, that's hard, Jason. How you gonna do that? I say, it may be hard for you. It's not hard for me. I've done the hard thing. I've been in America as a Black man. That's the hardest thing you can do is walk around here with melanation in your skin. So just by sheer nature of where I was born and who I am, I have to deal with difficulty. So I've become accustomed to people telling me what I can't be. And then I do it, and then they congratulate me, and I troll them and tell them, nah, you ain't believe. Now you just want to be on my side. But I forgive you because it's all good. You didn't know. You didn't know. Your insecurity showed up. So I give people the grace and empathy to understand that their perspective on life is based on their experiences, not mine. My perspective of life is based on watching people do things that they say are impossible. My parents being married for 47 years, that's supposedly impossible for Black people. Watching my community in Chicago produce some of the world's greatest, most influential people. They say that is impossible. Coming from a city that was founded by a Haitian immigrant, Jean-Baptiste Coussabo, a Black man who came up to the north to do trade with the First Nation to make sure that they had fur, which is the blackest thing ever. If you come to like fur coats, it's just like, that is so ironic. But the fact that I grew up in a city where I was able to live in an open air Black History museum by just walking down the street, it gave me confidence that I have one shot at this thing called life. This isn't a practice life. So I don't have time for fear. I have time for faith. And when I talk about fear, my relationship with fear isn't absent. I have fear all the time. I just don't let it stop me from trying. Because my greatest fear is not trying at all. I don't care about failure because you only fail when you don't try. Failure for me is a lesson I can learn from that, and I'm one step ahead of my competition. And at the end of the day, man, what's the point of living a mediocre life or average life, not from a financial perspective, from an aspirational perspective, because we can choose our outcome. We can't choose where we begin, but we can choose our adventure and we can choose our outcome. And we have to always tell ourselves that we have a choice. We're fortunate. If you're born in this country or you live in this country right now, despite the craziness we seen yesterday, we have a choice. Yeah. And as long as we have a choice, we can always choose to bias towards our higher self. The world needs us to vibrate at that level. Because I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the children who look at me and they're looking to me to see if I'm scared. And if I'm showing fear and I retreat, then I'm telling them it's okay to acquiesce when you're uncertain. Yeah. You just have to run towards ambiguity. You got to pull out that inner Bruce Wayne. You got to run straight towards Bane and punch him in the mouth. You have to, because at the end of the day, if we don't, you get stuck. And I have this visual metaphor when I ask people, and I say, there's a difference between fighting against and fighting for. When you're fighting against something, you're given that power to be more credit, right? Like it's like pushing a boulder uphill, but fighting for something, that's invigorating. Yeah. And what I'm fighting for is for people to have permission to be their authentic self 100% of the time. Because if I'm myself, that gives permission to others to be themselves. And then that's truly what success is, man. It's having a choice to be you. And that's all I want to ever do is to always choose me and choose not me in a sense of selfishness, but me in terms of my identity. Because I want to give permission to other people who are in their spaces and feeling the imposter syndrome, that they may feel to show up authentically. Yeah. Sure, I've lost opportunities. People may think I'm too Black, but it is what it is. That's not my problem. I shouldn't even know what you think about me. That's none of my business. I just have to live my life and love myself better. And that's all I try to do.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. So it's interesting when you talk about being, Forrest Gump, Lucius Fox, like these sorts of things behind it. What I would say like kind of ties them together is like and I always describe it as a life well learned, right? You figured out a way to learn fast, differently and stuff like that. What is it about learning that is like your superpower? Because I would say like that's probably the superpower. You figured out how to learn faster and differently than other people. How do other people learn to learn differently?
Learn to unlearn. That's the key. Our education system isn't structured to learn, it's structured to remember. It's the reason why we have a clock and we have linear progression. Remember, our calendar is built on the agrarian calendar, which is focused on output, right? It is a workforce calendar. It is a labor-intensive calendar. It is a check the box KPI-driven education system. That's not learning.
Yeah.
That's knowledge acquisition, right? Learning is discovery. And so for me, I've been able to understand the structure of education at elementary school, K through 12 level, what it was intended to do, but I also have a different orientation with time. So, chronological time comes from Chronos. Remember, but there's two types of time, Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is about linear output. It's about what we just talked about. How much can I get done before the sun comes down?
Right.
Because it was an agrarian calendar. People didn't have watches, they worked. Kairos time is the opportune time to take action. What can I do right now that gives me the greatest sense of purpose and feeling and fulfillment? So I optimize my time by focusing on activities that are the most opportune for me in the moment. By sheer nature of changing my orientation with time, I learn new things because I focus on what's important, not what's in front of me. Because everything in front of you is not equally important, but society tells you answer every email, answer every text, answer every call. I'm like, if it's really important, bro, you'll call me. You'll call me. If it's that important, don't send me an email, call me, because I'm not going to take the time and read that because it's not important enough. I will get to it when I feel it's in my priority matrix. Yeah. So that's the decision of how I show up each day. And like I said, things fall through the cracks, but end of the day, if they fall through the cracks and nothing breaks, then it wasn't an important essential activity. So it's just sheer discipline helps me to learn better. And I use, if you want a framework, something called the Pomodoro method, where you just optimize short bursts of time. Yep. And in that, I try to read, I give myself a positive relationship with stagnation or procrastination. I give myself a positive relationship with social media, where I'm like, let me just get on, Instagram 15 minutes, look at some memes. I'm not learning nothing, but I give myself permission. I don't feel bad about it because I schedule a time for it. Yep. And I go down rabbit holes. I look at things that are interesting that I don't necessarily understand. And I try my best to learn from other people's cultures. I never assume that what I see on television is representative of who they are. I try to, learn about the food, the religion, the art history, the music, the textile industry, which is the greatest way to learn about a culture is to look at the textiles, because most tapestry is intended to tell its narrative. So I just let myself look at the world as a kid every day. Children, you got to realize they see things for the first time every day. And as adults, we remember with grown children, we can see something beautiful for the first time every day. If we're not looking at our phones and stuck in this little screen and looking up and looking around, there's so much joy, so much beauty still left. We just got to choose to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's your birthday week. So you're so gracious here. Can I have one more question before I get you? Because I want you to go, this is like your rest day that you're spending with us. So I got to ask at least one more question here. So what I thought was really interesting is you talking about Jordan and Jordan, you get to develop a relationship with this man from it. But what's so interesting about Jordan, I'm going to go back to what you said before, is Jordan is basically, he lives his life building a portfolio, right? He's not just like one thing. He's got this portfolio, which you now have adopted the same way. Outside of basketball, Jordan, what was the thing that you learned about him that has sort of most colored some of your life? Because you've got an unfair advantage to get to meet this man that all of us are like, oh my God. So what did you learn from him that you think is helped you in your life?
Oh man, so that's such a great question, because people often think of Michael Jordan as a basketball player. I think of him as a business person.
Totally agree.
And so Michael, Mr. Jordan, and I call him Mr. Jordan out of respect, even to his face, he tell me, Jay, don't call me that. I'm like, nah, sir, like you paid for me to go to Stanford. When I met him my first day of my internship, and full transparency, I was walking around Nike with my hat turned to the left, like I'm still from Chicago, and he was like, hey man, look, let me talk to you for a second. Let me explain to you. So he knew what neighborhood I came from. My parents coincidentally integrated a high school on the South Side. It was the same high school that his ex-wife came from. So there's all these serendipitous things that happened that I had no clue about. But what I learned from MJ is two things. One, your greatest enemy is your enemy. The only person you're in competition with is yourself. So I don't look at other people, because if I compete against somebody next to me and they set their expectations lower, I may actually hit their expectations. So I have to make sure that I'm competing with myself, because I'm going to expect more out of me than anyone else.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking to my left, looking to my right, that's a distraction. So I go within in the art of introspection and the art of critical discourse with my own self. My inner dialogue is important. MJ is a very analytical person, extremely analytical, and he's very introspective. And I watched him do this. I watched Derek Jeter do it. I watched every great athlete, Kobe, all the people I've worked with or worked around or got to know, they all had one thing in common. They knew their weaknesses better than anyone else, and they were honest about it. What y'all don't see on television, you know what I mean, is you see the bravado, you see the caricature, you see the archetype that they have to become in order to compete. The human side of it is very different. It's did I do it right? I saw that kid that wanted me to sign that thing. I need to, man, I got to see that. I got to see the cost of being iconic and how they handled it with humility and grace. How Derek Jeter will walk through the city and shake everybody's hand in New York. He didn't take a private driver. He didn't have security. I'm a big dude, so he would joke like, "You my security." I'm like, "Come on, dog. You're not like I'm not on your payroll, bro. I'm not taking no. Nah, we're not doing that." But I saw people treat people with kindness who had extreme amounts of wealth and notoriety. I saw people speak to everyone. I saw MJ hold doors for other people. And so that was the greatest thing I learned, is that, you know, great success doesn't mean you have to feel like you're better than anyone. You have to keep this sense of gratitude in order to show up in a way that people, you know, value you and people respect you. The second thing I learned is don't make excuses, make decisions. I don't make excuses. If I mess up, I mess up. You know, I know that we live in a very, 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 I'm gonna be honest, racist, sexist, misogynistic, hateful society. I get to choose if I participate in that narrative and believe it can stop me. I don't think there's a man or a woman on this planet that can stop a person that's driven through a divine purpose and that has a reason to be here. And all of us do. So I simply put, I believe in this one. And I'm not pushing my faith on anyone, but it helped me navigate difficult times. There's something in Psalms 56:4 that says, "In God I trust and praise, and God I'm not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" We're all mere mortals. We all have fears, worries, concerns. We all have dreams and aspirations. So if we decide to live them, that's the most courageous thing we can do, is to become ourselves. So I chose very early on, man, by watching MJ choose to be himself, you know, and Derek Jeter choose to be himself. Derek Jeter wasn't the person people say he is in the media, this suave ladies man. You know what we would do when we hung out? We played Miss Pac-Man and we drank diet soda. Like, he's the most conservative dude ever. Jeter was not in the club, turning up, taking his shirt off. That man would walk through the nightclub, do his appearance. We're back at his house in New York playing Miss Pac-Man, eating gummy bears, talking about Little League, right? And so it's just that's how I carry myself, because the people who poured into me carry themselves that way. I want to honor them by living a life that's reflective of the ideals and ethos that they instilled in me, so that I can do that for other people.
Yeah. That is like the perfect way to wrap up. First of all, I'm super thankful that you have agreed to live your life and your purpose, because I do think, man, you are an incredible role model. And this group of authors here, we're going to be sending you some of their books when they're done with this one here, as a show of like a gratitude for this stuff here. So just be prepared over the next, you know, 2021, you're going to get a big box of books from me, from a bunch of these people you've inspired here. We always do one last fun thing here before we let you get out of here and go celebrate your birthday. Congratulations again on really becoming Lucius Fox, my friend. That is fucking awesome. So we're going to turn our cameras here and do some selfies with you, if that's cool. So everyone can kind of like get to say, hey, get to do a quick thing here. So turn your cameras, take some photos with this amazing man. Dude, it was awesome. I will tell you this one. So get him on here, do a couple shots with this guy. And Jason, thank you so much for all of your epicness here and being your authentic self. Take your photos, say hi to everyone. I'm going to take a couple photos for the class here, the group shots here, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Mayden, the man, the myth, the legend here, and be your authentic self here. This man has done it here, and I think I will tell you, you are a superhero. You are a superhero, definitely a superhero for all of us here, my friend. Thank you again for hanging out.
Oh, man, thank y'all for listening. I appreciate y'all, and I love to see so many diverse faces. I love to see that it's women and men, people of color. So congratulations to you guys looking like the world instead of looking like the myth of the world.
We're gonna flip.
This is what I want to see.
We're gonna flip the ratio, Jason. We're following your path here, my friend. I don't know if you know this, but like literally in the world of authorship, like something like about like 20% of authors are people of color right now, and so we are part of the new medium here of making that change happen here. So we're gonna change the ratio for us.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. And just so you guys know, Eric is a real deal. I don't know him from a can of paint. He reached out to me, and his message was so sincere, and he was so honest about his desire to serve you all. I had to come on this call. So this isn't a burden for me to do this because of who he is and how he showed up. So y'all got a real, when we talk about allyship, I don't believe in allyship. That's passive participation in change. This man is an accomplice. He is a benevolent co-conspirator and doing the right thing. So no, the conversation we had is why I'm on this call, because of how authentic he showed up and how much he genuinely cares for you and wants to fight for you. So that's not an act. Who he is, that's not an act. That's 100% him. So no, he's a real one. He's a real one. He's in your corner for real.
I appreciate it, man. Well, and I appreciate this is a big endeavor for all of us together. Thank you for everything you do. And as I told you, if I can be helpful in any of your journeys, other than just expect a big box of books coming here, my friend. So we're gonna have some books for you that you hope inspired to do and continue to change things. So thank you and happy birthday again. Congratulations on the big. This is like now what we're gonna live to be 120 as a superhero. So you've got like you're 1/3 of the way through here now, right?
That's it. My hologram gonna live forever. So
Exactly. Thank you again, and we appreciate everything. And guys, thanks so much for hanging out with Jason here. We'll let you get out of here. We're gonna stick around for a couple minutes here and chat as you get out of here. But thanks again, Jason, for hanging out. Super heroic. Silicon Valley-naire, the new stuff with Logitech, amazing stuff. And listen, when I see you next, I'm gonna bring some shoes to make it really awkward for you to sign with me.
It won't be the first time.
Thanks again, Jason.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for hanging out here. That was, man, these are amazing. I have to tell you, like, they even blow my mind here a little bit how amazing it is to hear from these people. Jason and I did hang out, and it was very gracious of him to say this, but truly, it was a cold email. I reached out to him and I said, hey, could you do this? And we did a call, and he was so excited to hang out with you guys and sort of stuff like that. So, as we do here, we did our time here together. For those of you that want to stick around and hang out in small groups, we'll do that one. If anyone has any things they want to share for the group, definitely please do here. I will share this recording here once I'll do a couple tweaks to it. Probably I'll try to share these things within a week or so of doing them. So for those of you that wanted to duck off, great. But for those of you that want to spend a few minutes in some small groups here, the next 15 minutes here, just to meet some other people who are excited about Jason, excited about shoes, excited about whatever it is, I'll break you guys into groups here. So you got the next 30 seconds here if you're going to duck off to duck off. Otherwise, I'll give you guys some small group time with one another. But man, this was awesome. I'd seen Jason speak before, but this was amazing. You guys got a treat here. I have to tell you, that was awesome to hear his conversation. And man, I'm glad I just let him rap a little bit here and do his thing. So I'm going to give you guys some time to hang out with one another here. Hang out in your group here. As long as you want to stay, please stay. If you're done, then feel free to duck off. But I'll give you guys some time to hang out with one another, meet some other people here along the way. All the stuff that you heard about today, you can use in your books. You can share with one another. But I'm going to get you guys plugged in together with one another. And then we'll see you guys all at our upcoming sessions. Next week, we got some really good ones too. And we'll see you guys on weekly sessions. So with that, rooms are open. Jump in. And we'll see you guys whenever you're done. Duck out of here. Bye, everybody.